Some walked red carpets, others commanded stages. A few changed entire industries. But when society decided their love was criminal, none of it mattered. These 10 figures, playwrights, pop icons, ballet legends, and Hollywood royalty, went from spotlight to cell block, not because they hurt anyone, but because they dared to exist. Their stories aren't just about arrests and scandals. They're about a world that criminalized identity, destroyed careers over whispers, and turned affection into evidence. From Victorian England to modern courtrooms, these lives reveal a brutal truth. Fame offers no immunity when the crime is simply being yourself. What they lost behind bars wasn't just freedom. It was dignity, legacy, and sometimes the will to live. Their stories demand to be told. Before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps us keep sharing stories that matter. Oscar Wilde, The Genius Society. Destroyed. The man who gave Victorian England its sharpest wit became its most famous prisoner. Oscar Wilde stood at the peak of literary fame in 1895, with plays filling London theaters and his name synonymous with brilliance. Then came the trial that shattered everything. Convicted of gross indecency for loving Lord Alfred Douglas, Wilde received 2 years of hard labor at Reading Jail. The sentence wasn't just punishment, it was annihilation. Prison officials forced him to walk a treadmill for hours, broke his spirit with isolation, and watched his health collapse. The man who once dazzled drawing rooms was reduced to prisoner number C3.3. Released in 1897, Wilde fled to France, penniless and broken. His wife refused contact. Friends abandoned him. Publishers rejected his work. He died 3 years later in a cheap Paris hotel, only 46 years old, destroyed not by his art, but by a society that couldn't tolerate his truth. His imprisonment became a symbol of genius crushed, of love criminalized, and of Victorian brutality disguised as morality. Joe Orton, the rebel who found his voice in a cell. Before Joe Orton became Britain's most provocative playwright, he was just another angry young man mocking authority. In 1962, that anger landed him in prison for 6 months. His crime? Defacing library books with satirical collages that ridiculed government propaganda and conservative values. The charges seemed trivial, vandalism of public property. But for Orton and his partner Kenneth Halliwell, the punishment felt personal. Britain in the early 60s still criminalized homosexuality, and their relationship made them targets. Prison changed Orton fundamentally. The experience sharpened his contempt for authority and fueled the dark, subversive comedies that would make him famous. Plays like Loot and Entertaining Mr. Sloane exploded with defiance, mocking everything polite society held sacred. Critics either loved or despised him. There was no middle ground. But fame came with a price. In 1967, just as Orton's star reached its zenith, Halliwell murdered him in a jealous rage, then took his own life. The playwright who survived prison couldn't survive love, turned toxic. George Michael. Freedom found in captivity. The man who sang Freedom 90 spent years hiding behind a carefully constructed image. George Michael dominated pop music through the 80s and 90s, selling over 100 million records worldwide. But behind the superstar facade lived a man terrified of his own truth. Public indecency arrests in the late 90s forced Michael out of the closet, but the struggle didn't end there. In 2010, addiction and reckless behavior caught up with him. Convicted of driving under the influence of cannabis, he served 8 weeks in London's High Point prison. The experience devastated him physically and emotionally. Prison stripped away the last vestiges of his public persona. Fellow inmates recognized him, guards leaked stories, tabloids celebrated his downfall. Yet something shifted during those weeks behind bars. Michael emerged more honest about his battles with addiction, depression, and the toll of living a double life for so long. His later years showed a man finally reconciled with himself, even as health problems mounted. He died in 2016, but his journey from closet to courtroom to acceptance remains a testament to the price of forced silence. Boy George. When the makeup came off, the flamboyant frontman of Culture Club symbolized 80s excess and androgynous rebellion. Boy George, born George O'Dowd, challenged gender norms with makeup, outrageous costumes, and hits like Karma Chameleon that dominated global charts. Then the music stopped. In 2009, a London court sentenced him to 15 months for assault and false imprisonment of a male escort. The case revealed a darker reality beneath the colorful exterior. Addiction had consumed him, transforming the cheerful performer into someone capable of violence. Tabloids feasted on every detail, dissecting his fall with glee. George served 4 months in Edmonds Hill Prison, where routine and forced sobriety began a slow transformation. He later described the experience as necessary, a brutal wake-up call that saved his life. Released in 2009, he rebuilt his career gradually, returning to music with humility, replacing arrogance. His story illustrates how addiction and fame can create a toxic combination, destroying the person beneath the persona. But it also shows redemption is possible when someone faces their demons honestly and accepts the consequences of their actions. Sir John Gielgud, Dignity Under Fire. He was British theatre royalty, a knighted legend whose performances of Shakespeare defined a generation. Sir John Gielgud stood at the pinnacle of respectability in 1953, admired by audiences and peers alike. Then came the arrest that nearly destroyed everything. Police caught him in a public lavatory in Chelsea, charged with homosexual conduct, still a criminal offense in post-war Britain. The scandal erupted immediately. Theaters canceled contracts overnight. Fellow actors distanced themselves. Newspapers printed his name with shame, dripping from every word. Gielgud faced a choice: retreat into obscurity or continue performing with dignity intact. He chose the latter. Slowly, carefully, he rebuilt his career, letting his work speak louder than the scandal. Audiences gradually returned, recognizing that talent and character mattered more than outdated laws. Years later, as Britain moved toward decriminalizing homosexuality, Gielgud became a quiet symbol of perseverance. He never campaigned or gave interviews about that night, but his continued presence on stage spoke volumes. Grace under pressure, dignity despite humiliation, artistry transcending prejudice. Tab Hunter, the Golden Boy's secret. He had the face that launched 1,000 magazine covers, square-jawed, all-American, the embodiment of 1950s Hollywood masculinity. Tab Hunter represented everything studios wanted their stars to be. But underneath the carefully constructed image lay a secret that terrified him. In 1950, police raided a private party in Hollywood, arresting Hunter along with other gay men. Though briefly detained, the damage was immediate. Warner Brothers suspended his contract. His name vanished from film posters. Tabloids hinted darkly at his lifestyle. The Golden Boy's shine had tarnished. Hunter spent the next 5 decades living a lie, dating women for publicity, dodging questions, maintaining the facade. Studios knew the truth, but demanded silence. He played the romantic lead in film after film, all while denying his own romantic reality. Only in his 70s did Hunter finally come out, publishing a memoir that told his full story. By then, his career was long over, the damage irreversible. He lived quietly until his death in 2018, a man who spent most of his life imprisoned by fear rather than bars. Rudolf Nureyev, the dancer who couldn't escape. He defected from the Soviet Union in 1961, choosing freedom and art over totalitarian control. Rudolf Nureyev became ballet's brightest star, performing worldwide, revolutionizing dance with his intensity and technique. But returning home remained impossible, until his mother lay dying in 1989. Soviet authorities granted him a brief visit, but the trip turned into an interrogation. KGB agents detained him, questioning him about his treason and immoral lifestyle, code for his homosexuality. Though eventually released, the experience showed that even global fame couldn't protect him from state suspicion. Nureyev lived as an exile, belonging nowhere completely. The West celebrated his artistry, but couldn't replace his homeland. The Soviet Union that birthed him considered him a traitor. His sexuality made him suspect in both worlds, though for different reasons. He died in 1993, a legend whose leaps defied gravity, but whose identity remained contested territory. His detention in 1989 reminded the world that oppression doesn't care about genius. It only cares about control. The dancer who could fly across any stage remained grounded by prejudice and politics until his final breath. Kevin Spacey, The Empire. That collapsed overnight. 2 Oscars. Critical acclaim. Netflix's House of Cards, turning him into a household name. Kevin Spacey controlled his public image with precision, playing complex characters while keeping his personal life locked away. Then everything shattered. In 2022, British authorities charged him with multiple sexual assault counts involving young men. The allegations described a pattern, using power and fame to coerce, manipulate, and abuse. Though later acquitted, the trial revealed behaviors that destroyed his carefully crafted reputation. Hollywood responded swiftly and brutally. Netflix canceled his show mid-production. Studios erased him from completed films. Awards organizations revoked honors. The industry that once celebrated him now treated him as radioactive. His career didn't just pause, it vaporized. Spacey's fall illustrates how hidden behavior, even when not criminally proven, can end decades of success. The secretiveness that protected his private life became its own prison. Accusers described years of silence, afraid no one would believe them against such a powerful figure. When they finally spoke, the consequences were absolute. From red carpets to courtrooms, Spacey's story became a cautionary tale about power, secrecy, and the price of abuse hidden behind closed doors. Elton John, When the Music Stopped. Briefly, the flamboyant piano man dominated charts for decades, selling over 300 million records and becoming one of music's most recognizable figures. But in the 1980s, during the height of his career, Canadian authorities briefly detained Elton John for cocaine possession. Though charges were eventually dropped, the incident deepened public scrutiny of everything about him: his lifestyle, his sexuality, his excesses. At a time when being openly gay remained career suicide, the detention added fuel to speculation. Tabloids dissected every detail. Conservative groups pointed to him as evidence of moral decay. The man behind Rocket Man and Tiny Dancer suddenly faced questions that had nothing to do with his music. The experience contributed to a spiral: more drugs, more denial, more distance from his authentic self. It took years of struggle before John got sober, came out publicly, and transformed his pain into activism. He channeled his wealth into AIDS research and LGBTQ rights, funding causes that protected others from the judgment he'd faced. His detention was brief, but its impact lingered, pushing him toward a reckoning that ultimately saved his life. Chris Colfer. The Rumor That Wouldn't Die. The Glee star became a symbol for young LGBTQ people struggling with acceptance. Chris Colfer's portrayal of Kurt Hummel resonated with millions, showing a gay teenager navigating high school with dignity and courage. But in 2014, rumors emerged that Colfer had been detained during a protest supporting LGBTQ youth rights in Los Angeles. The story spread quickly. News sites reported it, fans discussed it, and though he was never charged, the narrative took hold. Colfer never confirmed or denied the detention, but something shifted afterward. His acting roles decreased. He stepped away from the spotlight, focusing instead on writing young adult novels. Whether the detention actually happened remains unclear. What matters is how even the rumor of peaceful activism could damage a queer celebrity's career. The story reflected broader anxieties that speaking out, even for justice, carried professional risks. That being visible as an LGBTQ advocate could limit opportunities rather than expand them. Colfer found success as an author, but the incident, real or rumored, marked a turning point. From actor to writer, from spotlight to privacy, from public figure to someone choosing his own terms. 10 lives, 10 stories, 10 moments when cells became symbols of something larger than individual punishment. Some broke laws, others simply broke silence. Either way, their incarcerations revealed truths about power, prejudice, and the cost of visibility. These men lived in different eras, faced different charges, and experienced different consequences. But a common thread connects them. Being gay, or rumored to be, made their legal troubles more than just legal troubles. It made them cautionary tales, moral panics, evidence of societal decay. Their sexuality transformed misdemeanors into scandals, and scandals into career-ending catastrophes. What these stories ultimately reveal isn't just about individual failures or injustices. They expose how society uses the law to punish identity itself, how fame provides no protection when the crime is authenticity, and how progress comes only after countless lives are damaged or destroyed. Some survived their cells and rebuilt. Others never recovered. But each story matters because it shows the human cost of criminalizing love. The bars may have been temporary, but the judgment lasted lifetimes. If these stories moved you, honor their struggles by hitting subscribe and sharing this video. Their truth deserves to be remembered, not erased.